Hello, I'm your host, Aveline Clark, and this is the Six Star Business Podcast, where we have conversations with amazing, incredible people all about what it takes to be six star, going beyond the status quo, doing things differently, and how they bring purpose, love, and impact into their businesses every day. And in this episode, I sat down with my co-host, Kore Sebest, and we met with Isioma Utomi from Nigeria. She's extremely qualified. Her formative education was actually in the UK for high school, and then she went over to America to study at university. Not just one degree, but 2 degrees, and 2 very different degrees. It's quite a dichotomy when you think about engineering and digital marketing. And she brought that back to Nigeria, where she runs a company. She's grown up with her father as an entrepreneur, and she brings all this experience into how her consulting practice and helping others to really grow, both from a mechanical perspective and also from a creative perspective. So it's really 2 sides of the coin with Isioma. She brings yet another perspective to the notion of six star. So I invite you to sit back and enjoy this conversation with Isioma Utomi. Well, here we are. It's a cross-continent episode. I am here with my co-host Kore in Germany. How are you doing, Kore?
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for having me back.
You're welcome. It's good to see you. And our guest today is Isioma Utomi. It's so lovely to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Fabulous. Well, obviously there's an accent and it's different to Kore, so you're not in Germany, you're not in Australia like me. How about you tell us where are you from and who you serve, how you serve them, and maybe something you like to do in your spare time when you're not busy serving people?
Sure. My name is Isioma. I'm currently based in Lagos, Nigeria, which is where I'm originally from. However, I've been to school both in Africa, in the United Kingdom, and the US. So my accent tends to be a blend of the 3 a lot of the times. I come from a not so small family, the eldest of 5, and I had the joy and privilege of growing up in an environment that highly valued education. And so even now, I enjoy helping make things better. That's part of what drives me in life. And so as part of my current business, I help businesses and business owners improve their business and grow their business by improving team performance. I particularly focus on helping new managers because for myself, when I started out as a new manager in a Fortune 500 company, one of the first things that, I encountered was just a lot of, confidence issues related to how I could, present myself and lead a team effectively. And so it's something I'm very passionate about. Helping people get from point A to point B, where B is better.
I love that. B is better.
Yeah.
What beautiful. And what's something you like doing when you're not busy doing all those wonderful things, getting people to point B?
Ooh, I love movies. I love TV and movies a lot. I know a probably questionable amount of movie trivia. Don't get me started on any Christopher Nolan movie. We will be here for a while.
Thank you. Point noted. We won't. That's fabulous. I want to tap into this multicultural aspect that you've already raised. I'm fascinated. I love people's stories. Can you, let us into this journey of yours? Obviously, having had some education in the UK and also the US, but having grown up in Nigeria and now living there, could you share this amazing, interesting journey with us to what's brought you to where you are today?
Sure. Like I mentioned, I come from a family that deeply values education. So both of my parents are professors. So as you can imagine, just getting a bachelor's degree was standard expectation. And so I grew up in a very positive environment as the first child. I think what a lot of people think about like the African continent is like, we're highly patriarchal and such. But in my family, we have grown up in an environment where women are treated the same way as men. And my parents invested heavily in my education growing up. And so I had the best of everything from that standpoint. And so was very fortunate when I decided, at the end of secondary school, that I wanted to have, a more global experience, my parents were all for it. I even got to pick out the school that I went to in the UK for A levels, which was awesome and an amazing experience to start out like my journey into the world. Eventually, I got into college in the States and grad school. I studied engineering, which was a surprise to many because neither of my parents are in engineering. But like I said, I love to make things better. And engineering literally was the one course I thought like, something that will allow me to solve problems for the rest of my life. This is it. And so, so my first degree was in mechanical engineering. After a bit more work experience in my first Fortune 500 company, I decided that I wanted to explore other areas. And so my master's degree ended up being in digital media. So I have the joyous combination of having both a technical background and a media creative background. So it does make me very interesting in groups because I like to think that I can translate technical stuff to creative people a lot. So I think that it's the background and that I have has enabled me to do things that a lot of people probably wouldn't be able to, allow me to interact with people from all around the world. You find things in common all the time with someone like, we're talking to someone in Australia, talking to someone in England, talking to someone in Germany. It's very possible to find something in common. And I like that aspect of my background and my history. It enables me to connect with people on just a purely human level.
It's fascinating. And what brought you back to Nigeria, please?
Yeah, so I'd finished grad school at the start of 2010. And, the US was kind of just getting into the recession in 2008, 2009. And so at that point, I was like, you know what, maybe I want to explore what the options are back home. So I was like, I'll give it a shot, go back for a year, see how it's going. 10 years later, I was still there. But one of the things I love about, living in a global economy now is that you get to work with people from all around the world, regardless of where you live. And what I found is that there are a lot of opportunities in Africa. In the tech space now, for instance, there's so much happening. So people are flocking here. So I think I'm well positioned to interact with a lot of new people, find great opportunities on the continent. Plus, I still get to travel around a lot. So it definitely helps.
Yeah. What an interesting mix. Mechanical engineering, digital media. Like my brain is going, wow, that's creativity on another level, right? Looking at things in a different way all the time. Must be fascinating just working with an organization and having that background.
Oh, yeah. I remember when I was applying to grad school, because, when you're applying to school, you have to kind of justify why you're trying to get a degree. And so for my master's, like you, a lot of people were curious, why digital media? You came from engineering. And for me, honestly, what I wrote down and what I still believe is that innovation occurs at the intersection of different fields. And the fact that I'm as fascinated by the world of movies and creativity as much as I am by the technical aspects of building a business, problem solving, I think those things allow me to have a unique perspective, I would say. And I use this all the time in my current work. One of the big areas right now is around data and storytelling, the ability to go through data and analyze it and then actually translate it into something someone can actually understand and use. That is a very valuable skill set these days. And having that combination of interests, combination of skills, I found very helpful in today's world.
Have you met anybody else on your travels in the last 12 years who have had a similar interesting intersection of disciplines like yourself?
More and more these days. Initially, yes, it was a very peculiar thing. People are like, I don't understand what's happening. But the more we come into this area, especially now that, things like tech and coding are more rounded career areas. You see people who have backgrounds as medical doctors going into like tech. You have people who are in the creative arts going into tech. I think it shows more and more that there are fundamental skills that unite us more than separate us. And I think that that particular blend is going to become more and more prevalent in going forward. People who have technical backgrounds need to have social skills to lead effectively. People who have more creative backgrounds need to know some of the fundamental critical thinking and problem solving skills in order to, create their vision and share their vision with the world. And so I think that combination of skills is going to be more prevalent going forward. So I'm not afraid of being alone.
Being a trailblazer. Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah. That's awesome. Love it. I love the enthusiasm and just the concept of creating those new neural pathways, as new ideas and opportunities for innovation, like you said.
Engineering degree. Why did you decide to go for that? Was it curiosity on understanding how machines work to build something? Because a lot of engineers I do know are not as outgoing and so much human focused like you. They tend to be very introverts. They work day and night on their engineering plans, whatever. They're always keen to get the highest performance. And I'm just wondering how that fit together with you now being focusing on team performance, understanding individuals, and then orchestrate them in a way among the umbrella team so that they can also perform, as probably efficient as a engineered machine. I don't know. So how did that work together? Was it you being upset about you engineered something which was performing 100%, and the people who were literally using it were not performing to the expected level? Or where did you find, I need to step into that, I need to dig into that, because otherwise this collaboration of machines and people is not going to work at the expected level, which is bringing the added value to the company?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great question. To go back to the early days, when I decided to choose engineering, and I chose mechanical engineering for that matter, I chose it primarily because the simple reason most people choose engineering. I was good at sciences, I loved physics, but the thing that really spurred me on to the thought of a career in engineering was the fact that I love to solve problems. I think it was later in life that it occurred to me that I like to solve problems for people. So it wasn't necessarily purely about the technical aspect of the problem solving, which is great. I love math. Math is fun. But I love the fact that it could improve someone's life. The fact that, it made someone's work easier. That was really what drove me. And it's still what drives me in my career today, because my work in leadership training is very much around helping people be more successful at work. And so, because one of the things that I learned in my career as a Six Sigma Black Belt, where I did a lot of work around process efficiencies, is that no matter what technology you put in, no matter how beautiful and elegant it is, if you don't have buy-in from the people who are using it, it might as well be a piece of junk on a table because it's not going to get used. And so people are a huge aspect of making things better, a huge aspect of making processes run more efficiently. And so I think I got a lot more insight as I grew in my own career.
One of the biggest impacts among the experiences you made in the top Fortune 500, which actually is exactly the opposite of what you're aiming in your leadership courses, coaching, and what you do today?
Now, if you think about it from a Fortune 500 perspective, when people are trying to improve at work, typically it's categorized under functional excellence. A functional excellence organization in a very large company typically has manuals, books, training videos, a whole bunch of things, all designed to help people work more productively and be more engaged at work. Now, if you are a very large organization, you come into a large organization as a manager, this is probably all set up for you. But for smaller and mid-sized organizations, it leads to gaps in the system where if you're a manager, you're trying to lead a new team, you have to start creating these. And part of what I like to do is help people build out functional excellence in your organization. It's never too early to do that because it makes it a lot easier for people to, one, get into, be onboarded into their new jobs, and to be more successful at said jobs. Because a huge part of, why people are leaving their jobs these days often is because they don't feel successful at work. And a part of feeling successful at work is that you are achieving your goals, and that you are in an environment that enables that success. And I think that is what is changing a lot about the work environment now. We have to care a lot more about what people are getting out of the work experience than ever before.
I love what you just said, Isioma, and I'm really got a strong sense of how magical it is that you're able to bring your engineering lens into this people world, right? And creating, like you said, functional excellence. And I was just feeling into that, and obviously all my experiences in areas where there was certainly no functional excellence. And I'm thinking about how you must have a lot of joy around that, and especially when you're able to translate that technical piece to humans. And you've got a very rare skill there. It is, right? I know from my experience in corporate world, it's a very rare skill. You have typically your tech teams, the people that know how to build things and do projects and roll out these big systems. And then over in this other area in the corner of the organization, you've got people that deal with people. and they don't really talk to each other. So, wow. Very, very fascinating.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's an aspect I really enjoy about my work. And I think, obviously, like you said, it's very crucial. All these different disparate areas do have to talk to each other. Those are the things that make business work more efficiently. But they're also what keeps people engaged and part of the workforce. You know that everyone is supporting your success. And I think that's a really important aspect of work in this era.
Yeah. Getting that collective engagement, the buy-in, and people actually being part of the journey of change or evolution, whatever we call it. Yeah. What have you seen? Sorry, over the last 10, 12 years since your graduate studies and being in these organisations, what have you seen as been the biggest changes that have occurred from people and efficiency perspective, or success, or the market itself?
I would say one of the biggest differences is there is a greater need for empathy and a greater show of empathy now than there was before. One of the things I always like to say is that empathy is at the heart of everything. And it's interesting because this is a design thinking concept. It's a concept of a societal engineer. It's the same concept when you're in the creative arts, because empathy is what allows you to connect to things. And in a work environment, it's exactly the same. What is connecting you to your work? What, professional skills you need to be successful? What are the relationships that are helping you be successful in that role? A lot of it has to do with understanding what a person needs. And in doing that, you are helping them become more successful. And that is, I think, such a pivotal difference. In the early days, you might be considered, okay, you got hired for this job. Congratulations, go at it. We've given you like a book, a file somewhere, go ahead. Now there's more of a conversation. You start out by saying, okay, what do you want to get out of this experience? How can I support you getting that experience? One of the things I always like to share is that I was very fortunate early in my career to have very good bosses. I don't think I understood how good they were until I spoke to some of my other friends and the bosses that they had in a couple of their first jobs. but mine were incredibly supportive. I remember my first job as a people leader. I was in leadership team meetings all the time. And these are meetings with people who have 20, 30 plus years more experience than me. And I was also the only woman at that table, just to add an extra layer. And so I would get there and I'd be very nervous about saying anything because in my head, I was like, okay, they obviously know more than me. Like, what value could I possibly have? But my boss, drew me aside one day and he was like, I know you have opinions about this. Why aren't you sharing anything? So you know what's going to happen? The next meeting, I'm going to call on you and you will say what it is you think about what's going to happen. So I appreciated that, especially that he gave me some warning and he definitely pushed me to, just definitely, take my seat at the table. And it was amazing because once I did that, other people started respecting and asking for my opinions as well. They're like, okay, Isioma has a perspective. Please share. Like, she's young. She knows what's happening. So I think it's very important to have leadership that is aware of what people need and definitely strives to help people achieve what they want to achieve in their workplace. I think that's such a critical difference between, a decade or two ago and now. There needs to be a lot more empathy in order to be successful in a management role, be more successful at work in general now.
It's almost like a consciousness shift, right?
Yeah.
Let me challenge you. How does that work together with the company? And most of the big companies are focusing on profit and pleasing shareholders. How does empathy fit into that? How does individual evolvement or individual evolution of the person fits into that if everything is measured on KPIs to make it predictable? And predictability brings security in securing the quarterly results, which please analysts, which give you a good review, which pleases again shareholders. So how does that all work together by fostering and promoting individuality, by doing individual learning and teaching, and bring that into the more human way of interacting with humans in a team?
No, that's a really great question. What I would say is think about it also from the perspective of the organization and try and align what the organization wants with what the individual wants. Because in the end, if you think about it from a purely selfish perspective, the organization wants people to be more productive. And what will help people be more productive? Help them be more engaged at their work. So even from the organizational perspective, it is in their interest to engage employees better, to ensure that employees are getting more satisfaction out of the work. And the more you can align an individual's idea of what success is with the organization's idea of what success is, the better your chances of actually achieving mutual benefit in that case.
That's true. Yeah. That's the reason why a lot of big companies are having those employee engagement programs in place to understand the challenges and to improve and support employees in getting to their goals while achieving also company goals at the same time.
But they have to be honest about it. That's the difference. Most people can tell when the company really wants to know what you feel, really wants you to be successful, versus let's just throw something out there, just so they say we've done something around employee engagement. The new generation, especially Gen Z, is so on top of this. They will tell when you're being dishonest about your motives. So I think it's definitely a part of that can definitely be seen in today's workplace.
Is this something that's become expected by employees wanting to improve their careers, potentially look for another role somewhere else? Are they looking for these programs to be in place as a standard, as a minimum?
Yes. You find more and more, especially post-COVID. I think COVID kind of enhanced more of the need for purpose in one's work. And I think it's very obvious now through the Great Resignation that a lot of big organizations are suffering through, that a lot of people did not feel engaged in their work, did not feel that they had the sense of purpose in their work. And so it's now almost a requirement for any good employer who wants to retain staff to have an environment that does support, the individual as much as the organization. Because honestly, again, if you go from lovely, selfish perspective, it's really expensive to keep hiring people. So you want to retain people as much as possible. And so I think it's very much going to be a standard going forward that organizations invest a lot more in coaching for their staff, invest a lot more in either flexible programs that make it so that people have better work-life balance, because these are things that matter to people.
Do you feel that big companies are doing it enough? That they're ahead of their game plan, which should be actually focusing on the employees to keep them, to increase employee retention? Because if you see what's happening out there, Facebook is releasing and laying off 10,000 people. Twitter does the same. So many people are laying off. Yeah, and every time a new CEO comes into a company like Philips recently, 5,000 people laying off. I mean, what is the message to all the remaining employees who need to shoulder the additional workload of those who have been laid off? Yeah, I don't know. What is your view? How do you see the development?
I think that there are many different ways to handle these kind of situations. For instance, the CEO of Stripe also had a similar situation in the fact that they had to lay off a number of employees, but the way he handled it was quite different. He shared a very empathetic message. He also encouraged people in the message, if you're looking for engineers, if you're looking for people, I have a list of all my employees that lost jobs. They are great people. We'd love if you would hire them. So the face of that is completely different from a faceless organization where it's just somebody giving you the boot. This is someone who deeply cares about his workforce, wants to ensure that they're taken care of afterwards. And so even if the trigger is exactly the same, obviously the need for keeping the finances in a certain place and all that, but the actions that they took after that trigger, very different. And it shows.
Okay.
Being the Six Star podcast, I'd love to know if you've seen, well, first of all, my question is, what's your definition of a six-star business? And the second part to that is, what businesses or organizations have you seen demonstrate six-star in the last 12 months?
For me, six-star is about pursuing excellence. It's interesting because my early professional experience was in Six Sigma. And Six Sigma is essentially a quality methodology that is about the pursuit of excellence. And for me, I think that it's not always about hitting it. It's not about perfection. It's about consistently aiming to do your best as an organization, as a business. And I think that's what I always appreciate. So I think I see a lot of, amazing examples from smaller businesses and medium-sized businesses these days, because they pay a lot of attention to the customer experience. And I recently had something designed for me, and it was sent, by mail for delivery, and I got it. But it wasn't to the specifications that I wanted. And the response I got from customer service was excellent. They were like, okay, please describe the issue. Oh, this was like, what happened? We apologize. Can we, send you a replacement, blah, blah. It wasn't so much what happened. It was the attitude that they took after the issue occurred that now makes me one of their biggest fans, because it wasn't perfect service, but the way they handled it was perfect, because it definitely showed me that they cared for me as their customer. They took my opinion under consideration. They didn't just immediately start like, okay, no, our stuff is great. You're making up complaints. But the way they handled it definitely changed my opinion of them as a business. And I think that is something that most businesses should aim to do. Basically, put customer experience high up in their list of priorities. Because in the end, like I said, it's not about perfection. It's really about going forward and doing your best to show people that you care.
Going back to the empathy
Yes, indeed.
Lovely. How difficult do you think it is for businesses to become 6-star in today's world?
I think it varies by industry. I think it can be challenging if you have a lot more interactions, for instance, if you're in a service-based industry. But at the same time, having 6 stars is, I think, very much around what your standard of excellence is. So for a lot of organizations, maybe, getting the item to you in the same day, that's the idea of what the great customer experience is. Efficiency, we're getting it to you in this amount of time. That's what we consider the standard. For another organization that does the exact same thing, it might be, okay, maybe it'll take a week getting to you, but there'll be so much detail. It'll be so the well done that you will never, want to use another product again. So they have different standards of excellence, even if they're in the exact same industry. So I think it's very important to establish what you think excellence means for your organization. And that gives you a much better idea if you're actually hitting that standard of excellence. Because if you're constantly comparing yourself to all other organizations who have different goals and different standards of excellence, you'll probably never be happy as a business owner. So it's very important to understand what excellence means to you and to stick to that.
Would you say that striving to become a 6-star business would also impact your customers, expand your customers, or move it to a different group? Because it changes the customer experience. It elevates the customer experience, and probably you used to have customers who don't want that. Could be as well. Yeah.
It's very possible. I mean, it depends ultimately on what your strategy is as an organization. For some people, it's about getting greater depth in their industry. For some, it might be about expanding across, newer markets. So depending on what your goal is, sometimes businesses reach the point where maybe the customer they had in year 1 is no longer the customer that they will have in year 5. And depending on your strategy, that could be perfectly natural. Maybe the product you have now, your first customers can't afford anymore. But you have to understand what it is that you're doing that is best for your business and ideal for you. I think it's a struggle that especially a lot of smaller business owners have, because you obviously care deeply about your first customers. They helped you get into the business. They helped you be successful. But sometimes your business has to shift in order to accommodate either new circumstances, a new different lifestyle you want to live. And so therefore you do have to kind of graduate to a different level. And it's perfectly okay. You just have to understand that this is a new standard, and you have to be able to transition your customers as much as possible to that standard. But it definitely does happen to shift from one to the other.
You touched on something just before. Sorry, you touched on something just before where you said it's not helpful to compare oneself to another business. And hence, this topic of competition. And I'd love you to talk a bit about, competition per se. Is it healthy? Is it something we should worry about? Do we not worry about it? What do you think? Where does that sit with 6-star?
I think you should always keep an eye on competition. It's very important from a strategic perspective. You can't just live in your own happy little bubble and assume everyone will go about their business and not affect yours. That's very unlikely. What I would say is that the best way to exist in a market, especially with many competitors, is to understand who you are. Having an authentic sense of who you are as a business owner or as a manager, or what your business does, it differentiates you. It makes it so that you are not an equal product that can be traded off for another one. When you do that, it's much easier to be confident when a competitor makes a move. You see them doing this. You're like, oh, should I be doing that as well? Maybe, or maybe not. Does it suit your strategy? Does it make sense for the kind of business you are? Does it make sense for your own standard of excellence? if everyone's delivering in one day, but you know you won't have the same quality standards in one day? Does it benefit you to do the exact same thing? I think it's very important, especially for business owners who are responsible for the strategic direction of their organization, to not be as reactive to what competitors do and to have a very solid sense of self in order to be long lasting in the market.
I really love that answer. Because that's literally what happens today, that business owners focus too much on competition and they keep up in adapting what competition does. And by doing that, what happens is they get towards this conformity and standardization way and losing their individuality, what actually differs them from all the competition. They're applying the same processes, the same tools, the same way of working. And there is no individual business, for those initial customers who selected those companies because of their individuality, which is lost.
No,
Very
absolutely.
nice.
Yeah. It makes me think of an economics concept I learned when I was very young, elastic and inelastic demand. Basically, the closer you are to a competitor, the more alike you look, the more likely they will switch back and forth between you because you're like, oh, the $5 difference doesn't matter. I'll go with the other guy. However, if you are a unique product, no matter what the price difference is, people will still buy yours because it's unique and you're buying it for reasons other than purely price. So it's very important how you differentiate yourself.
In what way has your university visits in the UK and US expand your horizon in thinking about the world, thinking about people, interacting with people? Did it have an influence? If yes, I predominantly did. What was the positive ones, and what were the not so positive ones, which you turn into positive lessons learned for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My experience, both living and working in other countries, I think was very pivotal to shaping me growing up. My first, obviously, experience, living long term in another country was for A levels. That was the first time I was in a classroom with people from all different cultures from all around the world. I attended a boarding school where we had kids from Hong Kong, kids from the UK, kids from the US. It was a serious melting pot. And one of the lovely things I love about being that age and getting that exposure is you still had the reinforcement and cushioning of a secondary environment. So you had teachers, people making sure that you were okay, and you were in a safe environment where you got to experience all these things. By the time we got to university in the States, it was a whole different ballgame. I went to a massive school. You met people from all around the world. And I would say that shaped my upbringing so much because aside from getting a fantastic liberal arts education, I made friends from all around the world that I still keep in touch with today. So if I land tomorrow in San Francisco, I know someone there. If I land, in Germany, I know someone there. So it's a lovely experience to have. I mean, obviously, some of the downsides of, being in a multicultural environment is that you also realize that some people don't know so much about your own background or your own history, and they ask questions that may or may not be so tactful. And I remember being in one of my early job, one of my first jobs, and the question I got was, around, I didn't know like people had like cars and stuff in Africa and stuff like that. I was like, I laughed. So I think a lot of it has to do with the way you handle these things. So I laughed and I told him my mother drives a BMW. And so I think it's sometimes the way you handle that has to do with your humor and how you deal with those situations. Because I realized that for them, they were coming more from a point in ignorance. They really didn't mean to be mean-spirited. They just didn't know. And I have a lot of privilege as someone who has lived in a multicultural environment, has been to school abroad. It's not the same for everyone. And so I think having a positive reaction and educating them about, the kind of environment I grew up in, I think is very important. And I think it's a way to get along with a lot more people. It's really just sharing about yourself. And that, helps more people be aware.
What do you think is the biggest challenge for people to harmoniously work in a team together?
Teamwork, there are so many facets to teamwork, honestly. There are many reasons why a team could be potentially dysfunctional or not. But one of the reasons I would say that I see quite frequently is just competitiveness sometimes, because I think there are two sides, like collaboration and competitiveness are very close if you really think about it, because you're all trying to accomplish a goal. But one person thinks that, oh, it would benefit me if I do this myself versus doing it with other people. And helping your team realize that collaboration actually allows more people to achieve their goals, I think that mindset turnaround is so necessary, because there are definitely some roles where competitiveness is an aspect of your work. But at the same time, you need to realize that for most jobs these days, collaboration gives you far greater benefit. Again, I often like to go back to the selfish reasons to do things, because when you think about it, your chances of achieving this go up when somebody is supporting you do that. The other person's chances of getting their goal also goes up if you help them accomplish that. So even if it's mutual self-interest, however you like to call it, the fact is that the more you collaborate, the more likely you are to be successful at work. And I think that's a quality that needs to be emphasized more in teams to get true value from your team.
So literally what you're saying is you become competitive by being very collaborative.
It works for everybody.
Right?
It's like two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Do you think that the need for collaboration has grown over the past, especially since COVID, given all the changes that we've seen in our society and in workplaces changing the way that they operate?
It's interesting because we have post-COVID, we had a lot more people who are working for themselves, doing more things as individuals. But at the same time, we realized that we are more interconnected than ever before. To get anything done, you probably need to partner with this person or this agency, or have the VA help you do something. So even if you're working for yourself, chances are pretty good you are working in collaboration with other people. So collaboration skills are highly sought after now, because to get anything done, you need people with different skill sets, different areas of expertise. It's highly unlikely you know everything. So it's more likely that you will need to work with other people in order to accomplish your goal. So there's definitely more need than ever before for people who are able to collaborate and collaborate effectively to achieve goals.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I want to switch over to the topic of innovation, which is where you kind of started about this intersection of your disciplines. Innovation is such a sexy word. People talk about it a lot. It comes up, all the time in different conversations. But I'm more interested in innovation as an outcome of what we've seen post-COVID, so what we've been through. And obviously, large organisations are going through the Great Resignation. Like you said, many people have left, gone out on their own. Small businesses have changed. So many of them have died, and new businesses have started, and there's collaboration. There's a whole raft of changes that have happened. So innovation. What's the biggest challenge that you see for organisations, no matter what size, to innovate, and how important is it at this time?
For innovation, generally, one of the biggest challenges I've seen in organizations of any size, honestly, is the mindset around it. So if you are in an environment that supports continuous improvement, continuous learning, you have a much better chance of being innovative. If you're in an environment where everyone says, this is the way we've been doing this for the last 30 years, it has been working, why are you trying to mess with it? The chances are pretty good that even if you hire innovative people, they'll come in, they'll see that this is not working, they won't say anything, and then eventually they will leave. The truth is, you need an environment, you need a culture that supports innovation in order to actually be innovative as an organization. No one person can do it for you. You need to have an environment that actually supports those changes, that will actually be supportive of any kind of positive change in any direction.
Brilliant. One of the topics that we talk about on this podcast is about doing business differently. And many guests have talked about the need to do things differently, as in not what the status quo is pumping out. So what are your thoughts on businesses doing things differently to succeed, to grow, to be seen as 6-star, to beat the competition, to make a difference?
For a business to really succeed and make a difference, I would say that you, either as a manager or as the business owner, you have to be constantly learning. You can't just, okay, I've set up my business, everything is perfect, we're just going to keep rolling like this. Fundamentally, your environment will change in some way. So it's in your best interest to continue learning. What's the latest thing in your industry? What are my competitors doing? Even if it's not something you should be doing, but at the very least, you should know what's happening. You should also figure out what are the potential tools that would help me. Are my strategic goals still aligned with what it is my people want to do? Am I getting the right education for my people? Because a big part of what happens, especially in small and mid-sized organizations, is that the CEO or the manager is upskilling themselves, but they're leaving their staff behind. There's no way to actually develop a learning organization unless everyone is learning. And so you have to create an environment that supports that. One thing that has differentiated successful business owners from others is that you can tell that they promote a culture of learning. They always want to hear what's new. They always want to hear what's different, even if it's opposed to what it is that they think they should be doing. If a person on your team thinks, oh, this is like a new direction I think we could be going in, like maybe it differs from your initial strategic goal, at the very least, have a forum for listening to those inquiries. Because the truth is that innovation could come from the most surprising places. Maybe your janitors notice something about, what your competitor is doing that things applies to your own business. Maybe if they share that, your business could change. So I think it's important to be open to those opportunities. So whether or not you take them depends on what you're aiming to do, but it's very important to constantly be listening, constantly be learning, because that's what will make the difference ultimately in the long term.
More conscious than the average, right?
Yes.
In sensing the situation, tapping into problems before they actually happen or materialize.
Definitely. And a big part of that is actually listening to your customers. It's shocking how much information your customers will give you that a lot of business owners do not pay attention to. Sometimes people are blindsided, like, oh, we had a big client who suddenly, dropped off and stopped buying from us. You realize that they've been sending messages for months saying, I didn't quite like this, or this did not go how I wanted it to go. They gave you hints for months. You just were not looking. And that brings you back to data and how you use information. A lot of people think of data as, things in huge silos and there's somebody who's dealing with it somewhere. But a fundamental part of data that most businesses have is customer data. Your customer is constantly telling you things, whether you like it or not. So whether it's on social media, whether it's feedback after you've delivered a product or service, they are telling you what they like. And if you're open to receiving that, you have a much better chance of adjusting your business, of innovating in ways that pleases your target client. And in doing that, you increase your own business. So there is no downside to this because it gives you like a lot of foresight. It's like being a precog if you want to go to movie land. It's like knowing in advance what is going to happen because your customers are telling you. They're telling you by their reactions. And so it's up to you to use that data to actually move forward and grow your business.
I love the way this just rolls off your tongue. Isioma, like it's just, well, of course, this, and you make it sound so easy, right? The way that you're sharing it with us. I don't know about you, Corey, but I'm listening going, she's making this just sound so simple, like, right? Easy, joyful. But don't people get afraid to ask for feedback and talk to their customers? And this is not exactly easy for some people.
No.
I mean, I would say she's the role model for somebody with her optimism to make a real change in the culture and within the company. Yeah, you have to be passionate for, and you have to believe in what you do, and obviously you do, and you have optimism, charisma, all these things, all these soft skills, which are necessary to really make a change. Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. A lot of people are afraid of getting feedback. But the truth is, once you start, it gets a lot easier. Because it's like, building any type of skill set, even receiving feedback and learning how to receive it and use it is a skill set. So it's important, even if you never start with a channel that maybe you are somewhat comfortable with. If it's as simple as creating a form after you delivered a product or service. What did you think of my service? Rate it. You can start with simple star system. Out of how many stars, how would you rate my business? And then why? Something as simple as that prompts a consumer to give you more information. And you are a little away from it. You don't have to be directly talking to them to do this. But after that, I think it helps if you start having conversations with customers. A lot of successful business owners are very friendly with their first customers because they got to know them on, almost a personal basis. Because you see, why are you using my product? Why do you keep using my product? What would make you recommend my product to someone else? The more you know the answers to those questions, the more likely you can design your business to preempt those. I share your business because it does XYZ. Well, I should definitely be paying more attention to XYZ, shouldn't I? All these things are a natural part of the business. And I think it's just about putting in the effort and willing to break through the fear to start getting feedback from your customers with the end result that it's going to be valuable to you and it will help your business. And I think that's the perspective you need to take. You are doing it to help your business. And there's no downside to that.
No.
So actually, you have given already the answer to my question. So why does not many people and companies do it then, when it's so simple? And you just mentioned fear. So is there a correlation? What is it in your eyes, in your opinion?
I know, definitely fear is a big part of it for many people. When you go into a business, especially as a small business owner, your business is your baby. You don't want anyone to criticize your baby. I mean, do you go around telling moms that their babies are ugly? No. So no one wants to actually invite this kind of feedback about their baby. And so I think it does take a particular mindset and really thinking about the long term of your business. You want your baby to grow up. You want your baby to be successful. And so therefore, you are getting information to help them, to shape them, to be ideally what the customer wants and needs.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Really love that. You touched on purpose earlier. How important is it for us to be aligned with a purpose in our business, do you think?
I think it's extremely important. I think early in your career, you can probably go saying, I'm doing this for the money, and it's fabulous. Money is awesome. Do not get me wrong. Money is great. But eventually you start realizing that people have a lot of drivers, and purpose is a core driver in your success in whatever you do. It might be providing for your family. That's a strong sense of purpose for many people. It might be about creating an impact in a particular industry. That also serves as a huge driver for a lot of people. I think finding your purpose helps you be more successful, helps you, if it is what you want, make more money. I think that it's important to understand your purpose, and your purpose could evolve in your life. And it's important, and it's okay. It's very much okay to be doing one thing when you're 21, be doing another thing when you're 31, and yet another thing when you're 41. That is fine. But a lot of times, I discover for most people, the underlying drive tends to be the same. It's just expressed in different ways. So for myself, for instance, I know that a big part of me just loves to make things better, fundamentally. Whether I was an engineer, whether I worked in media, whether I'm helping people with leadership training, improve their teams, is the same fundamental driver beneath everything.
Beautiful. Love that. You've given us so many tidbits and, so much wisdom. And I think any business owner, manager, executive, CEO could listen to all those and take a lot from it. I want to ask you something that I ask all my guests, and that is there something practical, like a takeaway that you can give our listeners that they can, go and put into their businesses today? And our audience are mainly business owners. Mm-hmm. There's probably a couple of people that work in larger organizations, but we're talking more entrepreneurs or small business owners. Yeah, would you have something that you could leave them with?
Definitely.
From that juicy well of wisdom and experience.
So I will go back to the beginning because, Sound of Music style. I will definitely say that empathy is at the heart of everything. And you definitely, if you do that, you have a much better chance of being successful as a business owner. Whether you're using it internally within your team to find out how can I help you be more successful in your work? Am I providing you with the tools that you need? Is there some kind of education you need? Can I open a door for you to get what it is you need to be successful? Or externally, when you are dealing with your customers, asking your customers, what is it that I can do to make this experience better for you? All of it is related to empathy. And the more you can express empathy within your business and outside your business, the more chances you'll see opportunities to grow and improve.
Mm. I love that. You went back to the beginning, and it's empathy. It goes back to heart and being human, right?
Definitely.
Drawing from our hearts is the gold nugget and the takeaway. I love it. Corey, have you got any last questions or comments for Isioma?
No, I just found amazing the empathy role model, Isioma, with a black belt, certificate, Six Sigma, and then totally focusing on the most unpredictable element, the human being, with all his facets. Input is never the same output, vice versa. So I'm happy to have to meet people like you. Hopefully, even more people across the planet who do things with that kind of passion and firm belief in themselves that they can make a change by improving things and enhancing and helping others by doing it in a collaborative manner. So, chapeau.
Yeah, I have to agree and emphasize what Corey just said. Your empathy and the joy with which you bring all of this wisdom and this beautiful innovation to the world. Businesses that have you are lucky, or should I say blessed. So, thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Thank you. No, I really enjoyed it.
Likewise. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to being in touch with you soon. Thank you so much, Isioma.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.